Congratulations, everyone. This is Jeanette Milio. You all made it through week 6 and you're halfway there. Let's take a look at some of the essentials of our marketplace today. Let's recap what we did this week. This week's module covered the importance of the global marketplace, and it points out the impact of recent shifts and changes in the entertainment industry today. The module discussed the financial implications of the changing landscape and how best to manage them. It provides options to maneuver through these changes safely by understanding and managing the shifting demands with the distributors, the streamers, and investors. The module defines the steps one can take to establish a feasible project that can actually respond to the marketplace today and that can yield profits. We have to understand today's marketplace, especially in relation to the content that is in demand. We have to establish the important elements to optimize profits. We verify the value of a film or television project in today's marketplace before we dive into it, and we understand the steps that we need to take to protect our revenues. Now, what we should be able to do now is identify a feasible project that responds to the market shifts applicable today. We can establish the appropriate steps to increase the value of a project, and we understand the steps to take to protect our revenues. So what this means is that we need to look at our project very carefully. We need to establish the genre and the talent package and the value with our sales agent, and we also need to look very closely at our pre-sales. If we cannot make pre-sales, there's something wrong with our project. I mean, you have to think about it. If you could not even pre-sell a third of your budget, why would you make this movie? It already indicates that there is a problem, and it definitely indicates that there's no market demand. I hear people say all the time, oh, pre-sales, they're not important, or oh, pre-sales, they're not possible. Well, I'm here to tell you that most of these people that say these things are either lazy or just want to push a project to that they know very well should not be made at this time. And there are various reasons for that. Maybe it's just not the right time. Maybe it's not the right package. Maybe the script isn't good enough. But whatever it is, it needs to be addressed, because if you don't address it, the likelihood of the project losing money for your investor and not be profitable is very high. So look at the pre-sales, look at the sales estimates, and adjust your budget in accordance with your sales estimates to give the project the best chance it can have to be profitable. As I mentioned before, I look at my projects and always establish sales estimates that can show me that I can make about 70% of my budget back from foreign distribution rights revenues. And I look at the marketplace very closely, because sometimes I fall in love with a project and think it's the best thing after sliced bread, only to realize it's not pre-selling at all and no one wants it. So even for me, who's been doing this for 25 years, I have to check with the marketplace every time I make a new project. So I can highly recommend you do the same. And then if you do get a verification from the marketplace today in regards to the project that you want to do today, you're in a very good place in making something that can actually yield a profit. We are dealing with quite a frugal marketplace today. It's not like it was in the 90s and the 2000s, where projects pre-sold easily 80 to 120% of their budget. The market has shifted based on streamers coming in, based on acquisition budgets being lowered, and based on the entire shift of the audience behavior. So the marketplace is very frugal, and we as producers and investors, we need to take that under consideration. A reduced buying power in the international markets and a confusing domestic market here in the US, which is disrupted by streamers, cause producers, content creators, and investors to focus on what works, where, and how. So what works in the marketplace today? My observation is that mainstream genre features with a defined audience, valuable talent package, and a feasible budget work still and work very well. Low to mid-level art house films that are geared towards an Academy Award and have a meaningful talent attached can also work today. Local language content with an intriguing concept that can travel and expand outside the local region inside to the US and other markets globally also work. Often these local language content pieces are produced for a local territory, like a country, and if they're very strong in concept, they travel outside and have a good chance of being picked up by US distributors. Low budget indies can work if they stand out and have wins at festivals, and I'm saying meaningful festivals, not just some small neighborhood festival. TV shows with a unique concept, fresh characters, and an experienced showrunner with a feasible budget can also work today, per my observation. Non-scripted content with strong stories and interesting characters have seemed to work as well, and I've just produced 2 series like that. I think it is important, and I can only speak from personal experience, to really respond to what the market is looking for and what the market is asking for and what the market can bear. And everyone who produces content and includes investors' financing has to do their due diligence properly, not to put the investors' funds at risk. A frugal marketplace dictates the budget. Reduced license revenues and shifting sales estimates inspire solutions that can offset the potential loss in distribution revenues. Financial variations include the option to reduce the budget or increase non-recoupable finance sources. So what happens in a case where your budget does not meet 70 to 75% coverage coming from international distribution rights revenues as projected? It can happen. It happened to me that I work on projects and my sales agent comes back to me and says, well, I know you want to make this movie for $5 million, but I can only make about half of that back from international rights revenues. Then I have to think long and hard about what steps I can take if I still want to make the movie and if I still want to spend $5 million. If I still want to spend $5 million, I have to do a few things to my finance plan. I have to secure a US deal, meaning a US distribution deal with a distributor that ideally is above 35%, which indicates that my project could have a stronger drive and stronger success in the US. I also have to look at producing the project in an incentivized region that offers more than 20% of the budget as a minimum. Maybe I'll go to Atlanta, or maybe I go to another strongly incentivizing region where I can reach a higher incentive percentage to cover my budget. I also have to look into brand integration and music investments to take some of the burden of the fact that my sales estimates are lower. I'm also looking at in-kind services or a combination of above. So the goal here is to use ideally non-recoupable finance sources to offset whatever my sales estimates are not giving me. That is if I don't want to reduce the budget. Of course, if I reduce the budget, some of these things are not necessary. But oftentimes, I do need the $5 million to make the movie because I do want to pay my actors in a certain way. So I have to think about other options to make the $5 million work by using certain non-recoupable finance sources, which are incentives, brand integration, music investments, and in-kind services to offset the missing estimates that I'm receiving from my sales agent. Verifying a project's demand in the marketplace. While projections, meaning international sales estimates, are important to have a base for a finance plan, the actual market verification for a project is only achieved through pre-sales that are in support of these projections. What does that actually mean? So when you get a set of sales estimates from your sales agent, and let's say, for example, it shows Germany under the take column for $500,000. Now a German pre-sale is done and the German distributor pays on the license fee, meaning as a minimum guarantee, $250,000 for Germany. That tells you that your low estimate, your take estimate on the sales estimates need to be adjusted, because that means that your actual distributor paid half of what was projected and your sales estimates need to be adjusted down. If your German sale would show, let's say, $600,000 and you had projected on the take level $500,000 for the German sale, then you know you're on the right track, and you also know that you're likely going to make a little bit more than what your take column, meaning your low column on your sales estimates, have projected. So here's what you as a producer should consider when you verify the demand for your project. You need to look at the collateral. For example, the senior lender does not include US projection as collateral. They're very much aware of the volatile US market and they do not want to deal with it. They use international distribution projections and pre-sales, and they do the exact same thing. They look at the sales estimates, then they look at the pre-sales that are actually coming in. They will cash flow the pre-sales as they are, but they compare what the license fees are in comparison to what was listed on the sales estimates. And that is important to know because you would like to have the bank also give you a gap loan. So if your pre-sales are lower than the take number for the certain distributor, that means that the bank will likely reduce the collateral value of these unsold rights. And if the pre-sales that were done are higher or at least meeting the take estimate on your sales sheet, then you know you can likely get the lender to give you a gap loan that is in accordance with the unsold rights on your sales estimate sheet. The junior lender and the equity investors, they actually do look at US projections and they review them as their upside. They will, of course, also look at the available collateral from international distribution rights revenues as a collateral that they can recoup from after the senior loan has recouped. Different sales agents offer different estimates. And I would say personally, you should always go with the most conservative estimate that is provided to you. And here's why. Some sales agents do estimates in order to secure a project to get a producer excited about working with them. And if that estimate is higher than what maybe two other sales agents give you, you can likely assume that the sales agent might be a little too excited and may not be in touch with reality of the marketplace. And you don't want to really be in a situation where you're over-promising to your investor, what could potentially be the case in international rights revenues. You definitely don't want to be in a situation where you take those estimates to the bank and they verify them, and then you hear about the fact that the bank says, well, these estimates make no sense for us and we can't bank them. That's a big risk for you. So therefore, I would suggest you always go with the conservative estimates that a sales agent provides you with. And if you don't have any pre-sales, if the sales agent does not do pre-sales for you, if it's a good sales agent who has a very established track record with international distributors, if they are not able to achieve pre-sales, that means that there is no market demand at this moment for your project. Budget versus market. Budget versus market. The budget is the heart of any production. One would assume that the basis for a production budget is the script, the talent, and that's good. It's a good start to have a budget established that reflects the shooting schedule, the post-production and delivery costs, talent and producer fees, rights payment, finance, and any other costs. But it is also important to look at the budget and look at the affordability as it relates to the marketplace. So therefore, producers should discuss options with the sales agent to match the budget with the current market value, reduce the budget but still keep it insurable and bondable, and apply industry standard line items, costs and fees and charges, and thinking about doing so in a very feasible way. So that means when you go through your line items, make sure that you're not overpaying, which I've mentioned before, and make sure that you stick to industry standards, and ideally try to negotiate them as low as you can negotiate them, obviously. You're going to have to do some work on your budget if and when you discover your budget is not really a budget that the market can bear. Let's talk about a little more detail regarding the completion bond company. As we've mentioned in an earlier module with an overview of the completion bond company, we mentioned that the completion bond company is an insurance company that we use to guarantee the on-time and on-schedule and on-budget production of a film or television project. While major studios do not place a completion bond insurance on their films as they decide to take the risk of the budget overages and pay for them themselves, independent films should not take such a risk, because that means that you could potentially lose the entire capital if it doesn't cover overages, and you might find yourself abandoning the project. Most independent film projects, which include entertainment banks, tax credit lenders, and investors, will likely require a completion bond insurance to protect the investors from budget overages, abandonment, and any other issues that can happen with the production. So in short, if you plan on using a bank loan or a loan for estimated incentives, you must have a completion bond in place for your film or television project. We talk a lot about film financing. Let's take a quick look at financing a television project. Financing a television project is not so different than financing a motion picture, an independent motion picture, if we look at a few things here. The difference mainly is that the TV project has no theatrical distribution because it is a TV project. So clearly a TV movie is not going to be theatrically released, the TV series is not going to be theatrically released. Therefore, the exploitation is reduced by the fact that there is no theatrical distribution rights revenues applicable. So when we do a TV movie, we should consider this, particularly that there is no theatrical distribution, so we should stay low on the budget. TV movies are normally produced, depending on what it is and who it's for, between like 200,000 to maybe 800,000. In that kind of range is kind of the industry standard range that we're seeing and that we're producing them in. And these are movies that you'll see on like Lifetime or Hallmark, those beautiful feel-good comedies maybe, and sometimes also thrillers, like Women in Jeopardy thrillers are often seen in that budget range and on TV. For television series, it's a little different because the budget there could be all over the place depending on what series it is. If it's a non-fiction documentary series, it could be low budget, as low as, I don't know, 100,000 an episode. If it's a fictional series, it could go anywhere from $1 million to $5 million and maybe even more per episode, depending on the showrunner, depending on the cast, depending on the networks and the streamer that's working with you on the TV series. There are a few things to consider when you produce a TV show and aiming to do it in a way that you keep international rights revenues for yourself. So in that case, you do, in the case of television series, need a US network or streamer to buy this before you sell it internationally, simply because the international buyer needs to value the show in some shape or form, and it helps them to know who the US buyer is and who the US network is. You would also need to engage a showrunner to help to close a domestic deal, because showrunners are approved by the streamer or the network, and therefore it needs to be someone that they can approve and that they like. In some cases, you can bring the showrunner to them and then they approve it, and it's obviously someone that ideally has a track record of doing really good stuff or is a really strong writer ready to be a showrunner. But it could also be a showrunner that the streamer or network will suggest you use. Consider to shoot the TV shows, in the series in this case, in an incentive state or an incentive country internationally that offers high incentives, because it's going to help you in covering your production costs for a TV series that is either licensed or co-produced by a US network or streamer, because you still have to cover the other part of the financing somehow, which means you're going to need some pre-sales, you're going to need some incentives, similar to what you would do with an independent movie. Now, for a TV movie, it's not necessarily the case that you do need a US deal in place already when you do the TV movie. TV movies you can look at a little bit like a low budget feature that you would be producing. It follows kind of the same principles. Now, when you work with a sales agent, you want to make sure that they actually sell television series. Not every sales agent does. It's not their thing sometimes. So you need to look at what sales agents do sell TV series right now and what series are they selling right now, and will my series fit within the product line and the lineup that they have. There's a lot of sales agents that sell non-fictional series like documentary series, and there are obviously also sales agents that sell fictional TV series. You just have to kind of look who the right person could be for you. Now, for TV movies, you're going to find more sales agents who would sell those, again, because they are dealt with like a low budget independent movie. For your TV movie, I would look at the niches that some of these networks offer for them. As I mentioned earlier, Hallmark and Lifetime They often do these feel-good, light TV movies, Hallmark specifically. They love those holiday movies, for example. And then there are some networks that like the thriller action kind of genre. So there are networks that do certain niches, and look at those when you do those TV movies and aim your TV movie to the buyer that you want to sell this to. I would look into the various licensing and co-production options that are applicable for a TV movie or a series in particular. As I mentioned earlier, you want to have a US buyer in place for a TV series when you are selling international. And the licensing path and the co-producing path should be the ideal options to take under consideration when doing a TV series. Let's take a look at collateral. What is it and what is it used for? Anytime you work with investors or banks, collateral is important. Collateral is the security for them to lend against or give you an investment against. It is what they look at in order to secure their investment and look at the risk profile. So collateral in film and television is based on the projected value and worldwide distribution and ancillary right revenues for a film or television project. Anyone who invests in a film or television project or who provides a loan or funding of any kind will review the value of the project and calculate the risk associated with the investment or a loan. The risk stands in direct relationship to the collateral that is available to manage that risk. So collateral is basically nothing else than your distribution rights. The revenues achieved through international distribution rights revenues and US distribution rights revenues. Collateral allocation for a senior loan would obviously be distribution rights revenues, and they would look at the collateral component as an exclusive component to recoup from in first position. So meaning the senior loan is the loan that will be recouped first. We've learned this when we learned about senior loans. The junior loan looks at the collateral, which is distribution rights revenues remaining after the senior loan and gilt residuals have been paid. So we're looking at the junior loan, junior lender who's looking at the collateral after the senior loan has recouped, and then they look at what's still available. After the sales agent has gotten their fee, after the collection agent has gotten their fee, after the senior loan was paid off, as I just mentioned, and after any gilt residuals, if they are applicable, have been paid. What is then still available for me to recoup from? So they look at the remaining distribution rights and figure out what that is, and based on that, they will give you a loan and will charge interest in relation to the risk profile that they're taking. Equity collateral would be distribution rights and revenue remaining after the senior loan has been paid, the junior loan has been paid, any deferments that might be applicable, all the distribution costs, all the collection charges, and all the gilt residuals have been paid. So basically, everyone has been paid from all the distribution rights revenues that are coming in. The equity then looks at what is left for me to recoup my investment from. And in many cases, it is the US rights that are still available to be sold, and whatever is left from international distribution rights revenues that has not been captured by the junior lender, the senior lender, and has not been used to pay off all the various fees and deferments I just mentioned. The incentive loan has a whole different collateral because they are not using distribution rights revenues as collateral at all, which is why that makes this loan a non-recoupable loan for us, because we're not needing to allocate any distribution rights revenues to them. They look at the incentive region, the incentive provider, the state or the country, and have them pay them back their loan. So it's not paid by us, it's not paid by the producer, and it's not paid from distribution revenues. It's paid from the incentivizing region direct to the incentive lender. It's a little similar with the music investment because they do not recoup from distribution rights revenues at all, which is the reason it makes it a non-recoupable finance source on the level of the producer. Obviously, the music investment wants to be recouped, but it is recouped from music royalty rights revenues. So it's not being recouped from incentives. It's not being recouped from distribution rights revenues. It is being recouped from music royalty revenues that are related to the music that is generated and produced for the film or TV show. Anyone who is a producer that works with equity investors, which most of us have to do at some point, needs to look at any option to optimize the profit potential. Let's look at some options to optimize profit potential. Producers can take steps and be proactive in optimizing the profit potential for a film or TV project. Here's what we can do. We can research territory values and not just rely on sales agents. So we can look around and see what other movies are being sold in the marketplace right now. What are they actually generating from distribution rights revenues? And we can ask the producer who has produced that kind of movie and say, how did the movie perform for you? Where did you sell it? How much did that pay you for maybe a German license, or the license for Italy, or the license for Spain, or the license for England? And do a little research with producers who do movies that are in the same kind of vein than yours. And they're often very happy to share with you, what their experience is with the sales agent who is selling the movie on behalf of them, and also what the sales agent is accomplishing in regards to distribution rights revenues. Establish higher subsidies by considering international co-productions. So when you have a movie or a TV show as well that can be produced internationally, and the shipping over of cast and crew and everyone that you want to take values, or is feasible in a sense that you can do this for a project that has potentially a higher budget. So I wouldn't really go and co-produce an international do an international co-production for a movie that's $1 million, honestly. I would consider it for any movie that's maybe above $5 million, because at that point you can achieve some real great incentives internationally that could potentially cover over 50% of your budget. And then also, of course, research US incentives. Again, there is an advantage in staying in Los Angeles, where you have all the talent available here, and you don't have to carry them, travel them, and they might be happy to sleep in their own beds at night and give you a good deal for that reason. So if you have a situation like that, which is probably the case with a low budget movie, you should just figure out a way to do this thing in LA and use the fact that the talent is not going to charge you an arm and a leg, which is basically, a similar way of saving money by going to an incentive region. But if you have a movie that has a certain budget level, again, I think 5 million and up, it is worth thinking about doing the movie in an incentive state. I would say sometimes even movies above $3 million would be potentially something for you to look into in an incentive region. I would also consider you talking to the bank early, meaning talk to them about the sales agent that you would like to engage and why you would like to engage them. Ask them if they bank the sales agent, and then talk to them about your plan in regards to the budget, in regards to the pre-sales that you want to accomplish, and have a feeling for and get a feeling for what they come back with, and saying, here's what we think we can do for this kind of movie. We could probably give you a gap loan that could be maybe 10 or 15%. And if you have enough pre-sales, we can cash flow those. And obviously, it's all dependent on the sales agent and the sales agent you're suggesting work for us. I mean, there is a conversation to be had early on that will help you guide and steer your finance plan. Confirm the bankability, as I just mentioned, of your sales agent and distributor with the bank to make sure that they can actually help you and give you a loan. Consider deferments, absolutely important, because it's going to make the fundraise easier, because you simply have to raise less funding. That means you have to raise less equity, which means you have to give away less ownership in your IP, and you pay lower finance fees. It has a whole chain reaction. Yes, of course, you're going to have to pay the deferment back, and you might have to pay a 10% premium, but it is much more expensive having to raise that amount and paying a 20% premium on it. For the same reason, I would consider in-kind service deals. They work the same. In this case, they're not being paid in the recoupment schedule. They're just being given to you in exchange for either a better credit or getting a company on your movie, something that has value to this in-kind service provider that is not monetary. Research brand integration options. For sure, especially when you have a US deal in place with a network, that's a great place to start when it comes to brand integration. If you do that, however, make sure that the network that you have a deal with or the streamer is okay with you including some brand integration deals, because you want to make sure that you're not putting something in the film or the TV show that would upset the network. You want to make sure that the deal you're closing with the brand is not somehow standing in the way of any deals that the network or the streamers is having with the same brand. There are often relationships between the networks and the advertising agencies and brands that one is not aware of, and you can only find that out when you start talking to the brands and comparing notes with the network buyer. Use collection agents for the obvious reasons. They will collect all the distribution revenues coming in, and they will manage all the expenses and repayments that have to take place, so they protect your revenue and your profit. And of course, you want to contact the bond company early and adjust your budget early. If the bond company looks at your budget and feels it's too low, you need to know this, because if you need to increase the budget in order to make your project bondable, that means you have to raise more money. That means it changes the risk profile of your project. It also means you have to make sure that the sales estimates are sufficient to cover this. So talking to the bond company early on, sharing your script with them, sharing the first budget with them is absolutely essential when it comes to optimizing your profit potential. We've heard the word collection agent a few times in the module. Let's talk a little bit about what a collection agent actually does. A collection agent is a neutral third party that collects revenues from all sources in relation to the sales, distribution, and exploitation of all rights in connection with the film or TV project. So they're basically comparable to like an escrow account or an escrow company, where all the distributors who you've sold to or who the sales agent did deals with, all these distributors would pay the license fee into this collection account. So that means that money does not go to the sales agent, it goes to a neutral collection account that is set up specifically for the film or TV show that you're producing. No one can get their hands on this money, even you. It's going to be dispersed in accordance with contracts you have entered into, and loan agreements you have done, and investment agreements you have done, and sales agency agreements you have done, and deferment agreements you have done, and profit participation agreements you have done. So anything relating to anyone who is getting any payment from you is going to be managed by the collection account. The collection account issues report of such collections to all parties involved in the production and distribution of the film. So it's very transparent, because when they issue reports, these reports will show exactly where the money is coming from, what distributor has paid, and where the money is going to. Is it going to the sales agent? Are we paying the sales agency fee? We're paying the collection agency fee. Now the bank is being paid, and then maybe the deferments and equity investor is next. So it shows us, this report shows us exactly how much money came in and how it's being allocated. It's revenue protection. The distribution revenues and related payments do not go into the go to the sales agent, as I mentioned before. They go to a neutral collection agent. So revenue protection takes place here, because no one gets their hand on this money and no one can use it for anything else other than what it is supposed to be used for, in accordance with all the agreements that were done in relation to the film. Monitoring. Revenues and the distribution of profits are always monitored. Producers and financiers, as well as other profit participants involved in the production and distribution, can track revenues and distributions of profits. So anyone who is involved in your project in any way regarding distribution, financing, or profits will see these reports and can monitor exactly what money is coming in and where it's going. Repayment and expenses. Sales agents, lenders, investors, profit participants, guilds, and anyone else who is owed a payment of profits is paid through the collection agent. I mentioned this earlier. Anyone related to your film or TV project who you entered into an agreement with regarding financing or distribution or services they're providing will be part of this transparent structure, where they're getting paid from the collection agent and they're getting reports from the collection agent to see exactly what's going on with the film or TV show at any given time. We covered a lot this week, and again, it was a lot of complex stuff, so please feel free to email me through Canvas any questions that are coming up in regards to the material you went through this week or any kind of case study that you're working on. And again, if you would like to have a one-on-one meeting, just grab one of the slots made available on Canvas or just email me if there's no slots available and we set something up that works for both of us.